for joining us this morning. Systemic corruption is a major obstacle to stability and economic development in Nigeria. Estimates show that in the 60 years since independence, corruption has cost the Nigerian economy more than $550 billion.
Whoa.
Not naira. The EFCC, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission of Nigeria, recovered at least $750 million in local and foreign currencies linked to corruption and fraud in 2021 alone.
Whoa.
So let's take a look at this cankerworm. Our guests this morning are Mr. Tony Dania, who is with us in the studio, a legal practitioner. Good morning. And joining us via Zoom, it's my pleasure to welcome the Managing Director and co-founder of Trans-Sahara Investment Corporation, Mr. Bukar Kyari. Good morning, Mr. Kyari. As well as Professor Demola Abbas, who's a global security expert. Good morning, Mr. Abbas. Let me start with Mr. Dania here in the studio. The way we read and hear about corruption these days, in light of Better Edugate, which is also linked to the Minister of Interior, the former central bank governor, we hear all these things every day. Does it really give you the feeling that there is a fight against corruption?
Naturally, corruption won't fight back. The past leaders that have made attempts to fight corruption, including late President Yaradua, blessed memory, couldn't, defeat corruption. Corruption was entrenched and become conspicuously systemic under the military president of Ibrahim Babangida.
Ouch.
Yeah, he felt everybody has a price. It became more entrenched then. During Gowon's regime, they were bereft of ideas on what to do with the fund we have. And I'm surprised because they went abroad, they went to UK, US, they saw what is going on there, trains and all that. If they have institutionalized infrastructural development, so naturally people know what to do. We won't be here. Now, every person wants to make money from the system. It's only very few that are interested in the well-being of the society. It's only very few that are interested in putting in place policies that will be well entrenched and become institutionalized that will prevent corruption. It is not difficult to rule Nigerians. Nigerians are among the best persons in the world. I'm telling you this. It's only few persons, some persons who have not traveled around that will say, oh, Nigeria. No, yes, as much as we want to criticize our leaders, the private persons are doing well. And there are also corruption within the private citizens because they will negotiate with those in power, those who are, in the civil service, and then say, look, let's compromise this process and let's make money out of it. You make X amount, I make X amount. You, a civil servant that is receiving about 500,000 naira per month, you dangle 10 million before that civil servant. He will kill his father to allow you in. So, and then this system is well entrenched. The only way we can prevent it, the president must lead by example. If he shows exuberance, if he's not prudent, I am happy that he has started becoming much more prudent than the way he was. When the man came and said, look, subsidy, I am an expert in subsidy. I know the rate of corruption in subsidy. I know, and I'm in maritime, so I know how much corruption we have in subsidy. So I was very happy when he said he removed subsidy, even though in this channels, I criticized him for putting the cart before the horse. The palliative should have been introduced and subsidy done.
Even at that, some people will still tell you, well, yeah, you are you are collecting back what you give us. But let's take the opening comments of Mr. Abubakar as well on this issue. It's a very, very disturbing trend, and there are those who would say that, the issue of corruption is not limited to public service, it's also in the private sector. The challenge that one would have there in the first place is, what's your general assessment of our fight against corruption over the years? A quick look back, for instance, to what informed the need for us to have an EFCC is because there's those who would say the police is supposed to be the one doing what the EFCC is doing. But for whatever reason, the police was unable to do it. And then came the idea of ICPC and then eventually EFCC. In that gamut, what's your assessment of our fight? Do we have the right infrastructure? Do we have the right soft infrastructure, hard infrastructure approach to the fight against corruption, and why it seems it's pervasive and almost intractable?
Good morning. Yes, I think what we have as a nation is that, and by the way, fight against corruption has been going on in almost many of the developing world, and in some instances, even in Europe. 10 years ago, Greece was mired in corruption. The anti-corruption fights have not been successful because of many reasons. Of course, before we even go ahead and look at to do an assessment of our situation as a country vis-a-vis the fight against corruption, we need to also know what corruption is. It's very simple. If you are entrusted with public authority or public power and abuse it in a manner that benefits you or your friends and family, that's the simple definition of corruption. Now, it also means that all of us as a nation are corrupt. Why do I say that? When there is capacity, if you want to cut the line, if you want to do so at the very basic level of our lives, there seems to be an endemic corruption. Because if anything is not done fairly, it basically means it's corrupt. In a nutshell, it has permeated the fabric of society, and it has become a de facto, cancer that has been eating into the fabric of society. Now, the worst, of course, is the one where people are looking at it from the public sector side, meaning people that have been entrusted with trust are abusing that trust for their own benefits. The worst is even political corruption, where elections are manipulated, where you go after your opponents, political opponents, and the list goes on and on. Now, I think when we first of all understand what corruption is as a nation, and all of us know that it's not behaving in the right manner. So it's bad habit, essentially. If you go back to the Greeks or Cicero's saying of saying bad manners is actually the beginning of corruption or whatever. So essentially, what we have is that the assessment is that we haven't been successful at fighting corruption. In fact, I give another country similar to Nigeria, Russia. Russia had 25. The country had launched 25 anti-corruption campaigns, none of which had succeeded. And the reason basically is that the consequence of being corrupt, what is the penalty? What are the outcomes? How is the institution so weak that you do not get punished severely?
Okay.
If all of those add up, then you have a problem of it remaining in society. Lee Kuan Yew, who fought corruption in Singapore successfully, said that if you want to fight corruption, in fact, he didn't even use the word fight. I believe he said, if you want to defeat corruption, you first must be ready to jail your friends and relatives.
Yeah.
Now, that's probably the starting point.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to wait to see the first person to do that.
Nigerians would say that's rather extreme.
Well, you know, Professor Abbas, speak to the institutions that we have and what needs to be done about it. Just in the course of the week, we got reports that the chairman of the EFCC was saying that the major objective of the war against corruption and financial crimes globally is to drive economic development and create jobs. But he found that the quest for bribes by some of their own officials, their own investigators, maybe not, I don't know, whether they are staff or not, has become too embarrassing. Sounds something like it's something that's been on for a while. And having been working in the institution for a while, he would know. And that is just one of the few anti-corruption agencies in the country that we have. What's your take on that one? Because Mr. Abubakar also spoke to our general attitude, the general attitude of Nigerians.
Good morning, Ayo, and good morning, Madam. Well, I'm happy you started with that poignant observation. I'm happy you picked on it when the EFCC chairman spoke about the quest, and he said the craze and the quest for money is becoming too embarrassing. And I said, I'm happy you picked the phrase "too embarrassing," because when I listened to that, it was during his New Year speech to his team, his staff. I first asked myself, so what if it hasn't become too embarrassing? Is it okay? And when you say something has become too embarrassing as a pre-launch for you to respond, you are saying, well, unless it gets too embarrassing, I probably will not. And I don't want to be nitpicky, just to show that we have become quite tolerable, and very tolerant of certain vices, up to the point that they begin to choke us in the eye. So I think that is when we begin to respond. But be that as it may, I think Mr. Oluyede, the EFCC chairman, still deserves a slight commendation. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. I think it takes some courage for him to start his campaign by calling out his own quarters, by calling out his own staff, by saying, you know what, we have a problem with this corruption here that we want to fight in the country. And I think for that, we need to recognize that I think is a step in the right direction. Not that he has done anything extraordinary. Please, let me clarify. But the fact that he has spoken out, he's telling us that, look, I'm going to start by cleaning my house. And obviously, if you really want to fight corruption, it has to start with you. I think it was Michael Jackson says, want to save the world, you have to look in the mirror. You start with yourself. So to that extent, I think that is, but you say we should speak to the institution. There are so many of them, ICPC, EFCC, and this and that. If you like jump RIP, whatever you want to jump into it. It's not about the names. It's not about the names of the institutions. It's not about how many of them exist in the country. I think the problem is whether we're actually serious about what we are doing. I listened to the last gentleman when he talked about that we need to understand what corruption really is. And I agree with that entirely, because sometimes our problem in Nigeria is that we think we understand what we are dealing with. And we don't take enough time to actually study the nature and the dynamics of a fight that we are dealing with. And without understanding it totally, you cannot really begin to really engage with it. The lecturer who sells handouts in classrooms to his students or to our students can actually be practicing corruption of some mode, whether you like it or not. The pastor who in his church collects tithes from his congregations and use that money to buy private jets for himself or herself might be engaging some corruption if there is no auditing and probity in that church. And it goes on and on and on. So I agree with the fact that we need to take a step back and first try to, not that we are going to engage in any philosophical or endless conceptualization of corruption. You know what it is, but we need to understand its true nature and the dynamics. But still talking about the issue of institutions, to talk about IO, I think the fourth battle I think we need to do is when you set up an institution to fight a malignant vice like corruption, you need to recruit the best people to do that job. I'm saying this very cautiously and without casting aspersion on the personality of the EFCC chairman who is there now, who I think is pretty qualified to be on that job, no question about it. But when you look at Section 2 of the Act itself that established EFCC, that says somebody who is going to lead the EFCC must be from, a former enforcement, agent to the equivalence of this person in police and this and that. That kind of provision to me is highly nonsensical. You know why? The totality of enforcement agencies in Nigeria, if you put them together, will be less than 2% of Nigerian population. So you want to deal with a problem that affects every facet of Nigeria. You haven't thrown open the question of who will lead that to all Nigerians. So if you are a Nigerian very competent in so many ways to lead that, in as long as you have not got some enforcement whatsoever criteria, qualities behind you, you are automatically ruled out. And that cannot be correct. I think I said it long ago. This same thing is the kind of mentality that came in when the military came out, just when President Asiwaju came to play. When the military came out and said, if the president did not appoint somebody from the uniform of services, they will not respect the person as a national security advisor. And I said, what nonsense. You cannot be holding the commander-in-chief of Nigerian Armed Forces to ransom that he must appoint the NSA from this. And I'm very happy he did not do that Biden. At the end of the day, look at the US. The national security advisor more often than not the academics. Condoleezza Rice from Stanford University, this and that. Most of them are academics, are people who are intellectually endowed. Because at the end of the day, most of these things we are talking about, the security as an issue, it's not just guns and bullets. So it is a misnomer to equate, as an example, I'm just giving an example, national security advisor with issue of guns and bullets, instead of going after the same thing is with corruption. Also, you need to throw open, the recruitment process and get the best into that system.
One of the challenges, Prof, one of the challenges, for what we have seen over the years, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Daniel, you are here. One of the challenges that I have observed is never really about who is the head, but the system. For instance, I'm looking at a list now from the UNODC talking about the major anti-corruption institutions in Nigeria, which includes the ICPC, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, the EFCC, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the Code of Conduct Bureau, the Bureau of Public Procurement, the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NATI, the Public Complaints Commission, the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation, and the Technical Unit on Governance and Anti-Corruption Reforms, all in Nigeria. So I don't know if it is the function of the leadership of this team, of these organizations, as opposed to the systems. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It is the system. Let me quickly say that with respect, I differ a bit on how corruption was defined. Corruption is a generic compromise on the part of any person for gains. So it can be in the private enterprise, world. It can be in the public service world. But it is more pronounced in the public service because they have access to our commonwealth and they abuse it. The Edugate and the rest are not new. A justice of the Supreme Court retired and exposed a lot of things. That is corruption. So it's everywhere. Now the system must be sanitized. So it is not the leaders.
The question then is how? This fight against corruption has been on for how many years now?
See, President Tinubu has started it. I pray he sustain it. Corruption, look at Singapore.
Let me pause. Let me take you on for a bit. You said President Tinubu has started it. But this whole this whole drive started under the Obasanjo government of between 1999 and 2007, and here's why. It was the EFCC that was very, very strong at the time. You began by talking about the fact that corruption will fight back when you fight.
Yes.
Corruption fought back against Justice Akombi at the time, and for whatever reason, ICPC, you know, some people began to question a number of things, and then the EFCC came on board. Yes. And now we're still talking about what we're talking about. That is why
I said it's the system that needs to be corrected. The system allows corruption. For example, if the head does not tolerate corruption, it will flow down. That for the civil service. And then the private world will be affected positively. The impact will be, they will feel the impact because they interact with government representatives in doing their private businesses. I don't know if you understand me. If, for instance, you import and export, you deal with MPA, you deal with customs. Customs are government agencies. The same thing, the MPA. I bet you, the importer, you are a private person. You understand? So, if the system, if the president emphasize on cleaning the system, I will not tolerate corruption. I will deal with you. Take note, since 1999 to date, the first politician that will be the president is the current president. Obasanjo was a retired military man. Then he handed over to teachers. Then an ex-military man came in. It is now that a politician is there. And he has experience having fought under Nadeko with the military. He has gone through the system. So politically he's stable. But what he should do, he should sustain and not do a selective thing.
Let's be clear on this. Again, you began by talking about the fact that corruption will fight back.
Yes.
Listen to what Mr. Bukakari said the other time.
Yes.
Consequences.
Exactly.
That the consequences are not even strong enough to deter.
Yes. You see.
And the law is very clear. Each of these institutions mentioned are clear about consequences. Some of them, you know, there are many Nigerians who will not forget the example of former governor of Delta State, James Ibori, for a long time.
Yes.
He was vindicated in Nigeria, and for whatever reason, he had to be, you know, incarcerated somewhere else. So our laws are clear, but are the laws doing what it is supposed to do?
We're coming back to the system. The system is generic. Judicial system, prosecutory system. You understand? The will to prosecute, the will to ensure that consequences according to the law are meted out to victims, to suspects or persons you know, found to have corrupted the system.
Sometimes I have a problem with the English word will, because in the space of talking about will, you're also talking about political will.
Yes.
Do you need political will to execute a law that is written in black and white?
If the Attorney General, for instance, has power to say he can discontinue a matter, comes to a court and say, I'm not going to prosecute this person anymore, and you know that person has been involved in serious corruption and ought to be prosecuted. That's what we mean. And then there are certain incidents that are currently going on that makes you feel if this method is sustained, it will, to a reasonable extent, start a good fight against corruption.
Okay.
Mr. Carey, would you agree with those who say that corruption thrives in our society because of the weak rule of law and because of impunity? Because those who have been found corrupt, well, we don't hear too much after the disgrace of taking them to court and all that. But do they come back and enjoy the spoils of their corrupt activities?
Quite interesting. I think what we have as a nation, looking at corruption, in fact, one of the remarks that I find extremely difficult to get is when people say, when you fight corruption, corruption fights back. What do you mean? Corruption is nothing. It's people who are corrupt that fight back, not corruption itself. So I do agree, Ayo, that we are playing with words. And of course, English language is not my first language, so I may be mistaken here. However, we have laws, we have rules, we have processes. All of All of those have been codified. And the simple thing for us to do, if we believe in meritocracy and honesty, is to follow the process, follow the laws, follow the rules. That's simple. Anything outside of that should be punished. Of course, the interaction between public and private sector exists. That's why corruption exists. And even within the public sector. In fact, one of the things that we need to look at, there is a gentleman, a Nigerian, who had written a book called Prosperity Paradox, Efosa Ojomo. He said something that actually I should look at, we should, as a nation, look at it as a solution to solving the issue of corruption. Because when there is scarcity of things, there is a reason to get it. The example he gave was that of telephone lines before GSM. Now we had about less than 500,000 telephone lines, and only the rich can afford to get phone lines in their homes. For those of us that are old enough, we know it. And the PT&T or the Post and Telephone and Telegraph Company, which was a government agency, you have to bribe somebody to get telephone in your house or in your office. Yep. And it takes weeks, months for you to get a phone line installed. What happened when Mo Ibrahim, a Sudanese Egyptian, I believe, when he came up with the idea of introducing GSM technology or telephony into Africa, people said they cannot afford to pay for it. Africa is too poor. What he did was to still go ahead and offer it. And in the process, today there are close to 1 billion lines of phones. And I will tell you that the telecoms sector, in terms of getting a line, nobody bribes anybody to get a GSM line. Do you bribe anybody? But for us, we have seen when our parents and ourselves bribed entities to do it. So the solution and his alternative solution, it's not about institution, it's not about political will, it's to encourage innovation. Technology can cut through and level the playing field. And what I'm saying is that even our elections, there are applications. What was it in Afghanistan, 2009 elections in Afghanistan? The incident of malpractices reduced by 40-something%. And what you do is that when you are monitoring and when you have the glaring lights put up, the corrupt do not do their business openly. They hide. The reason they are hiding is that they know it's illegal, it's wrong, even morally and spiritually speaking, it's wrong, and therefore they do it under the cover of darkness, so to speak. However, when you open that up, whether using technology or whatever, the incidence of corruption reduce. So essentially, it's actually a combination of the power of the citizens and, of course, to a smaller extent, the political willpower of our leaders. And I hope we have bright spots within our nation that would also drive to eliminate corruption. Thank you.
Professor, let me bring the part about the impunity to you. Do you think that people who have been involved in corrupt practices encourage others to do the same because they seem to get away with it?
Prof, you're muted.
Thank you very much for the question on impunity, Shida. But before I come there quickly, let me respond to the issue of system that Ayo raised, and that system is not human beings. Ayo, you can have the best system in the world if you don't have people who are dedicated to make that system work. That system will fail. System and human beings is like dog and tail. The tail doesn't wag the dog wags the tail. Now, the same, I think gentleman in your studio was saying that the system is not people. But then he mentioned that Tinubu came is doing the right thing. It's the same system that produced Tinubu, don't let's forget. He came in and he made the same system there. The fact that he's showing a different path tells you can have the best system in the world. If you don't have correct people in power, it's going to be in position. You're going to make a mess of it at the end of the day. So at least you have a president today, President Tinubu, who says, you know what, there is so much, allegation going in the way of a particular minister. Let's look at what is going on. Suspend the minister. That is almost a force in the country. We don't get these kind of things in Nigeria. We got used to not having that. Coming to impunity now. Because if anybody behaved in such a brazen manner, they were doing that because they knew at that point in time, and they still know, for many of them in power today, that they can do it and literally get away with it. Political offices in Nigeria, I used to say long ago that corruption is almost one thing that binds all Nigerian segments together. It's the only area you don't have a politician coming out and saying another politician is corrupt. You almost don't get it in Nigeria. So the system is there. But then you have somebody who comes in to operate the system. It's a chicken and egg situation. I am not saying kill the system. I am saying when you have a system, and by the way, system is already there. The Constitution created it for us in the country. We have many laws. Nigeria has fine laws. So those laws are an embodiment of a system we want. EFCC has a law today. EFCC has many laws. Don't you have corruption in the EFCC? The system is there, but it's the people who are operating. So what Mr. Oluyede is doing today is to say, this is the system I met on ground. I'm going to make it work. I'll make it to work by making sure I weed out those who are going to compromise the system. So please, don't let's treat system as a brooding omnipotence in the sky. Whether you like it or not, people animate systems. Systems do not animate people. So I'll leave that. Now, coming back to impunity per se, fantastic. I agree entirely with Mr. Kiari's last analysis in terms of using technology to drive many things. As an example, if you go to government departments, you'll be shocked to know how much cash is dispensed on a daily basis. Not because we cannot use computers, but because it's difficult to fiddle, to be corrupt when you have technology doing that particular job for you. So we put human beings where technology should be able to work. So technology will cut down a lot. And when that happens, then you have less need for enforcement than we have today. However, beyond that is the fact that even if you have the best technological system in the world, and there are so many countries that have that, let's be honest, you will still have corruption anyway. You still have to have some corruption at some level. That is where impunity, strong impunity comes to play. What is impunity in Nigeria? Okay, so I am a minister, I am a commissioner, I am president, I steal money, I go to my church, I pay 10% in tithes. Pastors will come and pray for me, they will lay hand on me, and I'll shout to stand and this and that. Kids in the area will be emulating me, they'll be very happy that I've done fantastically well. I'm a drug pusher, I do the same thing. So we have a very stinking social system that we operate in the country today that has nothing to do by way of impunity. Let's ask ourselves a question. Is it enough to call out a minister that will find 500 something million in their personal account? What can Nigerians look forward to in terms of punitive measure? If that person were proved guilty, please don't misquote me. If that minister were proved guilty at the end of the day, because for now it's still an allegation, they've got to go through the due process. But the question is, what do you find? We live in a country, let's go back to as early as 1983. Umaru Deko left Nigeria with 4.2 billion naira. At that point in time, it was about 6.2 billion pounds sterling. That was more than the national budget of Togo as a country. That same person came to this country, was welcomed with pomp and pageantry. I mentioned that because I remember him very, very well. I wasn't too young in 1983. You can replicate that to so many across board in that. So people steal billions of naira. I'm sure Dezeni at the end of the day, again, it's an allegation. If Dezeni were to prove today, she would do some silly deal. Maybe, in Nigeria, you have somebody who was stolen, who was alleged to have taken out of about 80-something billion from the system. Somebody in charge of the national money in the country. What kind of deal would they do at the end of the day? So what messages are you sending out to the young ones?
Okay, in terms of...
It's cost effect benefit.
Yeah.
In Nigeria today, anybody who wants to be corrupt, wants to steal, they will say, look, if I want to steal, let me steal enough. So that when they throw me into just 2 years of jail, I'll come back and come and spend the proceed. We need drastic solution to end impunity. If you know somebody's corrupt, whether you're a minister, you're a commissioner, you're a private person, you are corrupt. If you go for 20 years imprisonment and you are denied the right to spend that money, everybody will sit up.
Exactly.
We weren't too young in this country. Look, I hate to mention the Diagbon regime in the 80s. And we remember them for one thing, with all the draconian laws and this and that. We remember the Tunde Diagbon for one thing, discipline. I was joking with somebody 2 days ago. I said, in the days of war against indiscipline, even if you came out of your house at 2 a.m., in your house, in your compound, you wanted to pee, you'll be shaking that, it's Diagbon there, it's Diagbon there. They are the same Nigerians. They were leaders. Leaders who dictate. Tell you that you want to follow in a particular system.
Okay.
Don't dictate to leaders.
Thankfully, those days are far gone, and it is 3 to now.
Those days should come back. We need that
whether
discipline.
or not we will be open to those days, that's another thing, Mr. Daniel, right? Because this whole thing, it's all going. The fight against corruption. So far, what I can deduce, is that the three of you are talking about the fact that we don't have enough consequences for actions. So, in the few minutes that we have, gentlemen, let's talk about the approach to these consequences.
Solution.
How strong should those consequences be that they will be strong enough
To deter.
See, I agree with the two guests. Do you know we have what we call plea bargain? I refer to the incident of Mrs. Sibru, the MD of Oceanic Bank. Why I mention name is that I can justify what I'm saying. You know, she was among the first big corrupt suspects that exploited plea bargain. You pay some money that you have stolen, you evade imprisonment, and you go with the remaining one. And it's in the law. So until you amend that look, the money will be taken and you will go to jail. That will reduce impunity. You know, when you want to curb crime, you take steps for deterrence. And I can't help but refer to the aid again in Nigeria. It will trickle down that you cannot do anything. Look at the impunity with which aid, as if nothing can happen, as if nobody is watching the system. You transfer money to a private account as if nobody would do anything. That is, to me, impunity. And it's all over the places. So now, if the consequences is improved from what we have, because everybody, one of the top military men that was charged by EFCC, he has gone for plea bargain. One of the top Air Force officer retired that was charged is doing plea bargain. So plea bargain allow those who have stolen so much money, and the judges cannot help it. To
you, is it a strong enough deterrence?
It's not.
Okay.
It's not, sorry please. It's not a strong enough deterrence. Impunity will stop if the head says it will not tolerate, whether from private or public servants or appointed person who get involved in corruption. It will reduce. Okay. It will also serve as a deterrence. Okay. Now,
just conclude that thought.
Yes, when any person that is corrupt is singled out, apart from the disgrace the person gets from public terrain, and the person is charged to court, it doesn't take anything for the National Assembly to amend that bargain. Once the fund are traced to anywhere, pick the fund, put it in the national covers.
Are you prepared to sponsor a bill for that to be done?
Yes. Like we said, corruption is everywhere. You want to sponsor a bill, some people are there, they'll make it so difficult for you to pass the bill. It's everywhere. It's so much entrenched.
Okay. Well, Mr. Carey, how strong should the consequences be so that it can ensure deterrence?
In simple terms, the reason why corruption is so pervasive is that the gains is greater than the penalty times the whatever else that. So the sum of all the penalties or consequences, which means that we have weak way of punishing a person who is alleged to have been corrupt or who have been found to be corrupt. Now, if you remove any signs, if you want to change, if you want to deter, in addition to technology and innovation, I think what you need to do is to remove any room for plea bargaining. or any room for any sort of, and in fact, we even need to relook at our value system as a society. Why am I saying this? Somebody will steal a lot, do have the plea bargain, or even spend a time in jail, come out, and what will the community do? Give him chieftaincy title.
Yes.
Those are signs that says that we have a warped value system. It sends message to the young ones that as long as you can get away, do whatever it is, get money, however, through whatever means, those values need to be thrown away so that we have the right value system and define people, award people titles or honorary awards for integrity and honesty rather than formal feasance.
Okay. Well, Prof, what would be your own comment? Well, you cited the example the other time of churches, those who believe that it's more than churches. I think Mr. Kyari also just cited that sometimes it goes as far as chieftaincy titles and honorary degrees here and there. But what kind of consequences do you think will be strong enough to deter?
Well, thanks. When I was making that example, I did say that it goes through the whole facet of society to cover everything. Look, we need the strongest consequence to deter impunity. And what do I mean by that? I'm not calling for capital punishment or anything like that, but we're talking about a consequence that is dire enough. Look, if you are a sex offender in the UK, as an example, apart from doing time and everything, they put your name on the public sex offender. That's a register for that, which means forever you can never deal with kids again. You can never, operate in a particular area. So I would say, first and foremost, plea bargaining is part of criminal justice system. However, there should be an exemption. Plea bargaining should be outlawed. It should not be applicable to those who loot and those who are accused of embezzling public funds.
Allow me to punctuate you for a second, Prof. How about the example of the people cited by the chairman of the EFCC, and some of the people that there are allegations surrounding them at the ports? These are just examples. How about those who go to government offices and want to get something, but for one reason or the other, they are not able to get it because someone is asking for something? How about those ones? What kind of consequences would be strong enough to deter?
That is corruption. It's the same consequence. You cannot begin to segregate. You cannot begin to graduate punishment for corruption. Corruption is corruption. Once you are corrupt, once it's proved, it's the same punishment that you have to. Now, if you talk in terms of degrees, obviously, somebody who is sitting in a private office in the private sector, maybe security man who is taking money to allow people to come into a bank, you can't punish that person probably to the same extent that you punish a governor or a minister who is brazenly looting public funds, because one is put in charge of private, money. One is dealing with public fund as a whole. That's what I'm saying. For those who embezzle or who have been proved to have embezzled public funds, there should not be plea bargain, pure and simple. That is very, very important. And as I said, secondly, apart from denying them the gains of their corruption, apart from punishing them through jail, I'm talking about long term, minimum 15, 20 years, that will have very serious deterrent, you must also put their names of public offenders as corrupt people who should never be able to go near public offices. Like in Nigeria, you have people who have been commissioners, who have been governors, who have been ministers, who sometimes they are taken out of public, places for a very short time that you just go off until something cools again. And after that, they're given a quiet role in the public sector still, but not in the front listing. It's still the same thing. You're still recycling criminality. Ban them from holding public offices once they have proved corrupt and when they have done a term on that, pure and simple. I'm not saying kill them. I'm not saying they should never work. Only they should never work to touch public fund again. That will serve, I think, as a strong deterrent.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a good place to leave it for today, because this matter of this fight against corruption is an ongoing conversation. and it will be for a long time. Professor Demola Abbas, global security expert, who joined us virtually. We also had Mr. Buka Kiari, Managing Director and co-founder of Trans-Sahara Investment Corporation, who also joined us virtually. And then we had Mr. Tony Dania, a legal practitioner, who was with us, or who is with us, was with us in our studio in Lagos. Thank you all very much for coming to share your insights with us this morning. Sunrise will be back with another interesting conversation. Do make sure that you remain with us.